The Song of Ice and Fire, two ultimate forces in eternal battle, fighting for dominion over an entire world. The ongoing feud between these two voices remains the driving force in Martin's most successful work, and this Song of Ice and Fire can explain the causes of the seasons, a look at the magical endgame of the winds of winter and a dream of spring, and the eternal battle for life itself. This story is carried out through four voices: ice with the harmony of water, and fire with the harmony of shadow. These four elements compose an epic song, which flows back and forth, question and answer, always changing and never in balance. Aside from causing the seasons, it is also essential to our fundamental understanding of ASOIAF, as many mythical beasts, prophecies, and powerful characters all stem from these symbolic magical systems. Of all the magic systems we see implemented in ASOIAF, fire magic is the most prolific and well understood. Various characters practice fire magic, and we see a prolific religion of Valorists whose abilities include everything from prophecy to raising the dead. There are many other fantastical elements in our story, such as Wildfire, which is semi-magical, and various magical beasts such as dragons and fireworms, which have made a resurgence into planetos. And that's what our story is about, magic coming back into a world. In this way, the song complements The Lord of the Rings, a story about magic slowly fading out of a world. The Song of Ice and Fire is a story about a planet on which magic was all but extinct, only for it to return in a powerful and unforeseen way. But what caused this resurgence? At the end of a Game of Thrones, a magical red comet begins streaking across the sky, seen as a sign of prophecy and power by nearly everyone in the world. Now, how this comet works and what it actually is the subject of many of a theory, but it is the single factor which led to the reintroduction of magic into planetos, and, I will argue, fire magic in particular. After the comet, Daenerys hatches her dragons, firebenders become more powerful, wildfire production is more efficient, glass candles start burning, and so many other things. Even those skeptical of the existence of magic think that the comet is a magical omen. Now, while we cannot definitively prove that the red comet is the direct cause of the resurgence of magic, as we don't actually know how the comet works, the words of many individuals, particularly the magically inclined, make it clear that the timing is more than a mere coincidence. This isn't to say that fire magic as a whole was extinct before the red comet. While the slow dying of magic was a centuries-long process that began with the doom of Valyria and continued as the Targaryens slowly faded from their former power, the diminishing levels of magic never fully went to zero. Even after the death of dragons, wildfire remained a real presence in the song, and the Targaryens continued exhibiting powers throughout the use of wildfire, dragon dreams, and Bloodraven and Sierra Seastar's special abilities, and possibly even Summerhall having magical events go down there. R'hllor also remained a force in the world, as we see with Melisandre having to have extended her life long before the song. Asshai was doing whatever Asshai does, and there were plenty of other small instances, such as that voice Varys hears in the pyre that caused him to hate magic. So what fire magic abilities are there, and how is it impacted by the red comet? Well, the most powerful, and directly contrary to the abilities of ice magic, is the ability to conduct resurrections. These fire wights only start appearing after the red comet. Most notably, these resurrections are conducted by Thoros. Thoros was a priest of the Red God who became disillusioned with his faith until, in an act of desperation, he performed an old ritual on his deceased friend Beric. The ceremony surprisingly worked, and Thoros and his followers had a radical change in faith. Beric was resurrected 5 additional times, eventually even resurrecting Catelyn Stark himself. These resurrections aren't without their costs, though. The longer between the death and the ritual, the more corrupted and less human the Firewight is. We see this with Beric, as Thoros rushes to conduct his ritual as rapidly as possible, but more importantly with Catelyn, as it is 3 days between her death and eventual resurrection, and when we see Lady Stoneheart, she is far from a sane human. So is Daenerys a Firewight then? Well, stay tuned. We're going to first look at glass candles. Glass candles actually only show up about 4 times in our story, but they are still massively important, as they form several critical links throughout our story and characters. The first time glass candles appear, we are simply told that they stopped working and have not been burning in several decades. The second time, we are told Marwyn is using one, and Alleras notes that it is how he notices Sam is coming. The third time, Quaithe merely mentions that glass candles are burning, and the fourth is similar, as XXD notes that glass candles are working again for the first time in a century. Doesn't sound like much? We just have a resurgence of magic, Marwyn and Quaithe, only 3 factors. Well, strap in. This really expands our story in a lot of ways, and we're going to get off track a few times along the way. First, it is clear that glass candles are tied with the resurgence of fire magic post-Red Comet. We hear glass candles stopped working in the decades before the song, corresponding with the slow dying of magic, but we know both from Marwyn's burning candle, as well as Quaithe and XXD's words, that somehow, magically, obsidian burns again. Now it seems that Euron also has a glass candle, as he is able to manipulate visions and dreams of others, and this is quite fascinating. Euron serves as a union between the 4 systems of magic we see in the song, both water magic and ice magic, but also fire magic and shadow binding, through the glass candle and the ties with Valyria and dragonbinder. Dragonbinder is also quite interesting. We first see it in the King's Moot, when Euron has someone blow it, and the horn seems to sway the hearts and minds of others in the King's Moot, winning Euron the kingship. The guy who blew the horn actually dies, horribly burnt from the inside. Euron then gives the horn to Victarion, telling him it will command dragons, and Victarion is preparing 3 separate slaves to blow the horn outside of Meereen. But it probably won't command dragons for the people who blow it, not only because the people who blow it will be dead, but also Euron is a massive liar and massively self-centered, so there is no way he would give a possible rival command over dragons. Fact is, we don't really know what the horn does, aside from its ability to command humans, but there are a lot of good theories, so go check out David Lightbringer if you want to learn more. I particularly believe the theory that the horn is to be sounded by Dany, in an ASOIAF version of the I am no man moment from Return of the King. But Dragonbinder is only one of the treasures Euron secures. In the Winds of Winter, Aeron notices Euron rocking full netherite. A suit of Valyrian steel armor is so valuable that the price is literally undescribable. Now, while it hasn't been proven that Euron actually went to Valyria, the great wealth and treasures he has secured, the Forsaken chapter from the Winds of Winter, and the ties Euron has to sphinxes, which are Valyrian monsters, make it seem overwhelmingly likely that Euron has in fact been to Valyria. Euron may be many things, but a fraud is not one of them. So what is Valyrian steel? Well, it is more than just super hard steel. It's supernaturally hard and sharp. It's clearly magical, at least to some degree. It can only be fabricated by Valyrians, and now with the kingdom collapsed, there is no remaining source of the magical metal. It can be reforged, but that process is exceedingly difficult and only known to a select few. Valyrian steel is based on fire magic, as not only is it from the kingdom of magic and fire, Valyria, it is very likely able to kill White Walkers, embodiments of ice magic. Now this hasn't been tested yet, but it seems overwhelmingly likely for many reasons. Even if it isn't, it's still a thematic opposite to the blades which the others use, which are also exceedingly sharp and supernaturally hard. But back to glass candles. Hey, I told you I'd get way off topic. Glass candles are made out of dragonglass, which is essentially just obsidian. Like every other fantasy genre, ASOIAF has decided obsidian is magical and super durable, unlike real life where it's so brittle you'll probably just cut your hands looking at it. Obviously, this shouldn't be able to burn, even with the magical context of ASOIAF, but it does. This is due to some ability of magical fire, which I'm going to refer to as Eternal Flame. It looks like obsidian has some link to Eternal Flame allowing it to burn forever, as well as form telepathic and supernatural links. This all stems from fire magic, and again, with the fire magic making a resurgence and the glass candles burning again, the abilities of Dragonglass are enhanced. Not only can Dragonglass kill the others, fire and ice in their eternal combat, but it can tap into the core of eternal flame. This flame is not an ordinary flame, however. It makes the colors it illuminates look mystical, with the world around it more resembling fire, and shadows looking like holes in the void. This is because shadows are... well, shadows. They're supernatural in the Song of Ice and Fire as well, and to better understand why, let's turn to Asshai. Hey, that rhymed. Now, Asshai is a very mysterious place, but we for sure know two things, namely that it is tied heavily with shadows and heavily with magic, or to sum up, shadow magic. Now, I would argue that shadow magic is the subclass of fire magic, just like water magic is the subclass of ice magic, but that's a personal theory outside the scope of this video. All we really know about Asshai comes from the characters who hail from Asshai, and we see 4 named magical characters that have been to Asshai: the Shadowbinder Melisandre, the Shadowbinder and very cryptic individual Quaithe, Marwyn, who has studied with Shadowbinders, and the 4th character, who told us she studied with Marwyn, as well as studied Shadowbinding, Melisandre. Firstly is Melisandre, who gives us the most insight into fire magic in ASOIAF, both through her actions and her POVs. Melisandre's power cannot be understated, as she is the reason 4 of the kings from the War of the 5 Kings are dead, and that the 5th is still alive. And she can exhibit powerful glamours, firebending, and visions, even if she does misinterpret these visions at times. Most notable of these abilities are the Shadow Babies, which are a radical exhibit of the powers of shadow binding. Melisandre herself tells us that shadows are actually agents of R'hllor, the Lord of Light, not the Great Other, the God of Darkness. Seems kind of odd, doesn't it? Well, we don't have an explanation, but I think this is because shadows exist only because of light. Shadows are just the outline of lights, or as Melisandre says, the brightest flames cast the strongest shadows. Secondly is Quaithe, who is, well, Quaithe. Quaithe is excessively cryptic, so we know next to nothing about her. However, she does possess powerful abilities of foresight, as her prophecies do come true on many occasions. She hails from Asshai, and she has proficiency in both shadow magic and fire magic, noting to Daenerys, a firebender who is more powerful, and stating that this increase in power was due to the resurgence of fire magic. While we can't be sure of Quaithe's true identity, Alyssa Farman was last seen in Asshai, and the descriptors all line up with Quaithe, making me think Quaithe is actually Alyssa Farman, but I digress. Quaithe has a personal interest in the return of fire magic, and is helping it along by guiding Daenerys. In fact, Quaithe is quite knowledgeable about the fire mage's abilities, and notes he can walk across hot coals and bend and interact with fire, as well as the ability to burn dragonglass, glass candles. Third is Marwyn, who studied with Shadowbinders. He could have even seen Quaithe or Alyssa Farman, or even Melisandre at some point. Marwyn can command glass candles, but his actions with Shadowbinders and Asshai are incredibly odd for a Citadel Maester, who are typically all opposed to magic. Marwyn himself even claims the Maesters killed the dragons. This makes me think Marwyn has an ulterior motive, namely studying the opposition. If the Maesters, at least Marwyn, hate dragons, embodiments of fire magic, he could be studying Asshai and shadow magic for opposition research, or maybe he's trying to play both sides, figure out how to make himself as powerful as possible. Fourth is Melisandre, who met Marwyn in Asshai, learning shadow binding there, and many other abilities. Again, she totally could have met Melisandre, but we don't really know. The Shadowbinders do seem to be a unified unit, on top of being very secretive. Their point of origin is unknown, though it is likely Asshai, and they do venture further into the Shadowlands than any others. Now, the reason Melisandre is notable is her role in the hatching of the 3 dragons. That's right, we finally made it back to Dany. So when Daenerys chooses to hatch her 3 dragon eggs, she burns Melisandre in the pyre, as death is required to pay for life. Once Mary begins burning, she begins some form of magical singing. Only then Dany enters the pyre. This singing is Mary's magic or soul or something leaving her body, or taking effect or something. Mary is a human who has studied shadow magic, so her death is what allows for the magical occurrence to begin. for Dany to enter the fire unburnt. Once Daenerys enters the pyre, the fire magic is in full swing. Dany sees many fire-based magical beasts and weird visions, such as fire lions, which I've already made a video on, but the climax comes with the hatching of dragons. The fires fall away, and Daenerys is there with 3 living beings, the mother of dragons. So is Daenerys a fire wight? Is the mother of dragons undead herself? Thankfully not. The methods for raising a fire wight are different than Daenerys' magical occurrence, and leave the fire wight mentally unstable, physically inferior to the human counterpart, and most notably unable to heal. We see Daenerys heal from many wounds later on, maintain clear and cogent thought, and only continue to grow as a human. You have to be alive to grow, and the undead are consequently unable to grow or heal. Furthermore, fire wights are, despite this not being explicitly confirmed yet, almost certainly immune to fire, just like the wights are immune to the cold. And Daenerys herself is not immune to fire, as she was burned at the end of A Dance with Dragons. Martin himself has repeatedly told us that Targaryens are not fireproof. Daenerys' occurrence was a once-in-a-lifetime magical event. The magical pyre did not resurrect Dany from the dead. It brought life into the flames, life in the form of 3 dragons. Now we know dragons are fire-made flesh, which lines up with the mythical hatching, as well as the ways that they are birthed throughout the Targaryen years. In fact, the magical abilities of dragons are quite extensive and fascinating. The fire breath is the most impressive, which seems to burn hotter than any flame and without fuel, similar to the unknowable source of the glass candles. This is an instance of the core of eternal flame, as the dragons also possess foresight and telepathic abilities. It is possible this stems from some sort of dragonglass-based material, but I don't really think so. Perhaps it's wildfire? Well, what even is wildfire? We know it's linked to fire magic as its production rate increases with the resurgence of fire magic post-Red Comet, but it is clearly inspired by real-world Greek fire. While we don't know exactly what Greek fire was made out of, we have discovered many similar compounds, the most likely explanation looking like quicklime. Wildfire is similar, just a little greener and less dense, more explosive. Greek fire was actually difficult to control, even though primarily used in naval battles, with several underdogs winning battles due to headwinds blowing Greek fire back in the faces of its attackers. Wildfire is similarly volatile, but it hasn't really backfired for anyone yet, as it's easy enough to control in battles such as the Blackwater, and Cersei can bring down the Tower of the Hand with basically no collateral damage, as opposed to starting a citywide fire. So I conclude that wildfire is actually quite different than Greek fire, more like Greek fire with the magical element, and easier for characters to control for narrative purposes. Is that magical element eternal flame? Wildfire does need a source, so possibly, but wildfire goes out eventually, and it isn't as hot as eternal flame. Since we don't really have a chemistry-based explanation for eternal flame or wildfire, it's really hard to say. Eternal flame is quite mysterious and something we'll have to bear an axiomatic belief in if we want ASOIAF to even make sense. Dragons can also grow indefinitely, and possess quasi-biological immortality, not capable of dying of old age, only perishing if killed by external forces. Lastly, dragons have spiritual links with their riders, including dragon dreams and other ties similar to warging but not exactly like them, as those are ice magic-based abilities. I would also like to state that the dragon's ability to fly appears to be semi-magical, as there is no way a biological organism looking like a dragon from ASOIAF would be able to fly in the real world. But this theory is technically irrelevant. It merely plays into the idea that many flying beasts have ties to fire magic. In one instance, the tie between a dragon and its rider, Valyrian and Princess Arya Targaryen, grew corrupted when the two disappeared without a trace during one flight. Arya Targaryen is quite a fun character, the twin of Rhaella, as she was the counterpart to Alyssa Farman, strong, independent, and wanting nothing to explore the endless expanse of planetos. Alas, I wish she was successful, as we only have like 30% of the total surface area mapped. Arya and Valyrian disappeared for 1 year, but when they returned both were in horrible shape. Valyrian was horribly injured, with massive wounds smoking and dripping blood and half-healed scars across his body. It is frightening to think what could have possibly injured the Black Dread to such an extent. Aine was near death, unnaturally thin and horribly burnt. Many believe the two went to Valyria, which makes sense as it was Valyrian's home, but we really don't know, as Irya died shortly after. Arya's death is very haunting. Upon returning, she uttered the words, "I never," then collapsed, and afterwards was rushed to the maesters for treatment. Her fever was so hot it could be felt through a knight's armor, suggesting temperatures of over 90 degrees Celsius. And there was some life forms inside of her, black slimy things which emerged when the princess dissolved into smoke, and died upon exposure to ice. There are a lot of mysteries here. How was she still alive? Why did Valyrian turn? Where did they go? And what does any of this mean? We really don't know any of the answers. This story is both incredibly gross and different than anything else we see in ASOIAF. It's possible these life forms are some parasite from Valyria, possibly what caused the doom after emerging from the deep earth, or maybe it's similar to Daenerys' stillbirth of Rhaego, who also apparently looked horrendous and misshapen, but in a slightly different way. Other than that, these black things are based on fire magic, but we really don't have any other grounds for theory crafting. There are other flying beasts, not just dragons. Wyverns are dragons without the ability to breathe flame. This is because they lack that core of fire magic, the eternal flame. Septon Barth puts forward a theory that Valyrians actually created dragons by practicing some form of magic on wyverns. That is, the Valyrians used fire magic to imbue wyverns with the core of eternal flame, and made an embodiment of fire in service to the flames and fire magic. We have many other traces of mythical flying cryptids throughout the world of ice and fire, through myth, rumor, and house sigil. Cockatrices are the body of a dragon with a rooster's head. Valyrian sphinxes are flying lions, with possibly stronger ties to fire magic, as they have the wings of a dragon. Harpies are female demons, also capable of flight, and griffins are massive eagle-lion hybrids. These three mythical beasts might not be real, relegated merely to heraldry and symbologry, but who knows what Martin may have in plan. However, we get one very odd account, that blood magic is used to make abominations called chimeras in the days of old Valyria. They are only name-dropped once by Septon Barth, but cockatrices, sphinxes, and griffins are all chimeras, and all at minimum tangentially tied to Valyria in some way. So the fact that they are, or were, real constructs cobbled together by Valyrian blood magic remains a horrifyingly real possibility. We also get hellhounds, another Firelink cryptid, name-dropped here and there, so they probably don't exist, but who knows. Interestingly, we never see phoenixes at all, despite them being a staple of mythical beasts of fantasy. There is one other beast which we know is real, though, one that has the same core of eternal flame as dragons. There are fireworms, which are native to Sothorios and Valyria, and can best be thought of as flightless dragons, without wings or arms or legs. They can burrow throughout any natural material, and can also grow to be unlimited in size, possessing a similar quasi-biological immortality to dragons or leviathans. They supposedly predate dragons in Valyria, dwelling in the volcanoes throughout the peninsula. Because they carry a universal hatred for humanity, it seems likely that they may have played a role in the doom of Valyria, with some sort of delving too deep scenario. The gross monsters which emerged from Princess Aine resemble juvenile fireworms, and it remains a possibility that, if they both went to Valyria, Aine was killed by the same fireworms which ended Valyria in the doom. These reptiles, though, are not the only mythical reptiles in ASOIAF, as we see animals such as lizard lions and several fantastical snake hybrids, but a few are worthy of note, perhaps also having ties to fire magic even if they lack that core of eternal flame. Basilisks are a thing in ASOIAF, but don't get your hopes up, since they aren't actually deadly supermassive snakes. Instead, queer and ferocious reptiles found throughout UT and South Thorios. They differ in size, but can grow to be as large as a hippopotamus. The supernatural powers of this animal stem from its blood and its venoms, which we see used as poisons throughout Westeros. However, the magical effects of this poison are best witnessed when ingested by an animal, as a single taste of this blood of a basilisk can fully possess a mind, and supposedly cause even a mouse to ferociously attack a lion. Yet another instance of blood carrying some form of magic in ASOIAF, as blood magic runs true in many places. There are a few more interesting reptile-like cryptids, but the tattooed lizards seem to be the most fascinating. Found in Sothorios, and also in the zoo of the Sea Lord of Braavos, these things are basically massive lizards with legs. Wait a second, those are just dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are real in ASOIAF? What? Okay, I think it's best to just leave our exploration there. I don't think we can even top dinosaurs being real in Planetos. All of these mythical beasts and cryptids in ASOIAF, be they real or not, can inform us more about the story, its themes, and illusions. Dragons are fire made flesh, possessing a core of eternal flame, which also seems to be the spark which drives glass candles, the power of Dragonglass, and maybe even Wildfire, as it causes telepathic links, prophecies, and many visions. Flight in the skies are also tied with the fire god, as well as the magical systems of firebending, shadow magic, resurrection, and vision. These abilities are all in resurgence due to the Red Comet, after a near extinction over decades of slowly diminishing power. A resurgence which began with a bang when Daenerys Targaryen entered a fire unscathed and used death to create life made of nothing but fire. All these fire magic and shadow magic systems are at least somewhat unified, in service of either a singular Lovecraftian being or a concept merely interested in self-proliferation. This could be R'hllor, some other god, or merely a vague system of magic which seeks to further its own agenda. But whatever it is very real in the song, and has been impacting our story in massive plot-altering ways since the end of the Game of Thrones, causing the seasons to shift, bringing dragons back to life, and giving us the greatest source of prophecy and visions in ASOIAF. This force runs counter to the system of ice magic and the hosts of the sea, and to learn more about ice magic, well, you'll have to watch the previous video on this series on cryptids and magical beasts in A Song of Ice and Fire. We've covered everything from unicorns to fire lions and mermaids in this series, but the previous installation was on the Great Other and ice magic, and maybe one of my best videos yet. The video before that was on Lovecraftian inspirations in ASOIAF, as well as the theory that water magic and mermaids will play into the story in coming major ways, in line with the others. If you are able, please go check those videos out, as my channel is super small at under 500 subscribers, so even one view or comment helps out a ton. If you aren't yet, subscribe if you can, since that really boosts my channel significantly. We're rapidly running out of pre-1K tickets, so be sure to grab yours while supplies last. And thank you to everyone who has already subscribed. But that's all I've got for today. Please remember to like this video if you enjoyed, and comment any thoughts below. My channel is small enough I can read and likely respond to every comment this video gets, so the feedback helps a lot. This video and my last were a lot of work, and I would say my best 2 videos yet, and greatly expanded the scope of the cryptid series, turning more into theories of magic and driving forces in the song. The cryptid series will continue soon, likely with a video on magical horses and their variants, but after that small video I think the magical beast series might just be done, as we've covered almost everything there is to mention. I'll probably move on to hidden identities next, but I'm not really sure yet. So thank you all very much for watching to the end, it means a lot. Please do take care, and I will see you all next time.